guys, in this video I am going to be speaking to you about 10 places that I recommend considering if you want to live out here in Ghana. The first place I recommend is Kumasi. Kumasi is within the Ashanti region. Kumasi has a good blend of a traditional way of life and the modern way of life as well. It has good road networks, access to shops, schools, hospitals are generally quite easy as well. At the same time, you're not in a place like Accra where it's significantly busier. Another reason why I feel like Kumasi is a good idea is you have access to things like the Menchia Palace, lots of smaller villages around and stuff like that. So it's a little easier to immerse yourself in culture if that's something that you're wanting to do a bit more of once you move out this way. The only cons that I would say about Kumasi is, even though there's shopping centers and those type of things around, your options are still limited if you compare it to Accra. The other thing is traffic out that way can be significantly heavy during peak times because their main roads are not as many if you compare it to Accra. The other thing that's worth noting is Kumasi is significantly cheaper than Accra, so that's also a plus. The second place I recommend is TEMA. TEMA is great, especially if you're looking at communities like Community 6, Community 10, Community 11, Community 12. So TEMA is divided into communities. There's an older part of TEMA and then there's a newer part of TEMA. So the newer part of TEMA starts from Community 24 onwards. Community 6, 12, all the other ones that I mentioned, they're all in very, very good proximity to the airport and places like that. TEMA is a whole city of its own. And so you can have access to basically everything you want out here. And if you want to go out to the prime areas in Accra as well, you're not too far away, especially if you're staying within the communities that I've mentioned just here. TEMA has good markets, good road networks, very well organized homes, very structured, very easy to move around. So if you're somebody that likes to take walks and things like that, it's very easy to do that if you live in the communities that I've mentioned. There's other communities that are decent as well, but the ones that I mentioned I feel like are highly recommended for people that are just moving here to allow a soft landing. And between those parts of TEMA to the airport is probably just about a half-hour drive. So the location is also quite good. If you want to go to the Accra Mall, if you want to go to Junction Mall, they're all within good proximity. The other good thing about TEMA is, depending on what part of TEMA you want to stay, it's definitely more affordable than if you decided to live in the prime areas within Accra. So that's also another beneficial thing. You also have access to the beach. The beach is not far from you, so it's easy to go to the beach, have a good time, and all that good stuff. The only con I'll say about TEMA is there's not much of a variety when it comes to like bars and nightlife stuff. You know, restaurants, bars, clubs, quite limited. There's only a handful of places like that. So if you're somebody who likes to walk to a cafe and stuff like that, it's not ideal in comparison to if you went to a place like Laboni and those type of places. And then the other thing also is if you use the motorway during peak hour, the traffic can be quite not so great. So that's also another con, I'd say. So the next place that I'm going to mention, it's basically a bunch of places that I collated together because I feel like they all have a similar vibe to it. So I'm going to group them all into one point. Laboni, Ridge, Osu, East Legon cantonments, all those places come under one umbrella in my opinion because they're like the prime areas within Accra, airport residential included. These areas, you can have access to literally anything you want, from cafes to bars to restaurants to lounges. They're everywhere. Very easy to walk to from your home or apartment or whatever it is. Lots of expats within this area, which makes sense because convenience. There's no shortage of anything. It's almost like you're in the West when you're living in these parts of Accra. The cons for this place is it's significantly more expensive than you will get in any of the other places that I have mentioned earlier on. It can also be quite congested. Traffic is not so great in these areas because they're not far from the business hubs and those type of things as well. So it makes it a little bit hard to maneuver during big events, during peak times of the day and stuff like that. In these areas as well, if you can afford it, there's like lots of modern apartments, modern amenities, basically everything you want to make your life comfortable, you can find in these areas that I've mentioned. You just have to have the budget to back it up. Another thing to note in an area like Osu is, even though there's residential bits to it, it's got a very busy nightlife, so it can be quite noisy even at nighttime in certain parts, so that's something to also be mindful of. Another place that I need to mention is an area called Dansoman. It's within the Greater Accra region again. It's probably like 40-45 minutes drive away from the airport. Before East Legon, Jowulu, all the popular names that you guys know became popular, Dansoman was the place to live. It was considered that's where the affluent people were. I feel like now it's a mix of upper middle class people that live out that way, but it's quite residential, very nice homes as well, good neighborhoods, like just a good spot really, and access to there is also quite good. There's no shortage of good schools and hospitals and those things nearby and stuff like that. So that's also a place that's not spoken about much, but it's definitely worth considering because it's in a good spot and access to a variety of things is pretty easy. The other place that I'm going to mention is Pokwase. Pokwase is also within the Greater Accra region. It's probably about a 45-minute, 50-minute drive to the airport, depending on the time of the day, depending on traffic. Pokwase is also a nicely well-organized area. It's newer, it's upcoming, but at the same time, it's a good spot for people that would like a bigger home, but then they're on a smaller budget. Pokwase and a place like Kwabenya, they're all sort of within the same category, I would say. They have good residential homes. Now that they've completed the Pokwase interchange means that access to and from the city center is a little more convenient, a little more accessible, and you can find reasonable homes in these areas. The only con I'll say is it's still developing. There's still a lot of newer developments out this way. And so the roads are not all done. You might find some dirt roads here and there and that type of thing. And also during peak hour, traffic can be not so great, and that can impact you as well. So if you're somebody that's looking to live within Accra but want somewhere that's not really in the city center, you want to be on the outskirts a little bit, Pokwase might be a place to consider, as well as Kwabenya. Another place that I would mention is Oyarifa. Oyarifa is literally like almost like at the edge of Accra, like right between Ebri and Accra. Oyarifa is there. Oyarifa is also a good spot if you're somebody that appreciates Ebri but can't afford to live there, and you also don't want to be completely out of Accra. Oyarifa might be a place to consider for those purposes. It's also a little bit reasonable in comparison to, let's say, East Legon and those type of places. It's also basically one straight road all the way from the main part of Accra into Oyarifa, so access is a little easy. The only con is traffic. Out that way can build up during peak times and things like that. Again, some of the inner roads are not done and stuff like that. And generally speaking, infrastructure develops quicker in the main parts of Accra that I mentioned earlier on in comparison to these other places that I'm mentioning. So that's also something to bear in mind. So if you're waiting for the roads to be done and things like that, takes forever because it's really not considered priority as such. So generally it's the people themselves that might put together something and do their own roads, but it takes years for the government to touch those type of areas. Another advantage to Oyarifa is its proximity to Ebri. So having access to the Ebri Gardens, you know, mountains, waterfalls and those type of things without having to drive up too far is definitely a plus. You can literally just drive up the mountain a little bit to get some views in and things like that. So that's all a plus for a place like Oyarifa. There's also a limited number of like shopping malls and those type of things. So all that you have to come back into the main parts of Accra to have access to those things. Same goes for Pokwase, same goes for Kwabenya. Now that I've mentioned Ebri, I might as well mention Ebri. Ebri is a good place to live if you want to live in a quieter area with lots of greenery, if you want to be up on the hill and stuff like that. Ebri has become really expensive. If you want to be in Ebri itself, it's quite expensive. You know, one of the old presidents of Ghana lives out that way and stuff. I know Bob Marley's wife had a home there or has a home there, I'm not sure. So for those reasons, it's really appreciated over time. If you want a home or land within Ebri itself, it's just like buying a home in Laboni or Ridge or whatever, you know. But if you're willing to go outskirts a little bit, you might not find a home that's modern enough, but you might be able to find land around like about 10K USD upwards. There's lots of farms, so fresh food is not a challenge to access, you know. And if you want to come into Accra, it's only probably about an hour's drive. So that's also another reason why it's become really expensive. Ebri is top notch. It's beautiful, especially in this season where it's raining a little bit, stuff like that. The greenery is incredible. So if you can afford it, Ebri is quite up there as well. Another place that I would recommend is Koforidua. You guys, I went to Koforidua not last year, I think the year before, and I used to go there every now and again because my grandmom's brother lived out that way, and it's stunning. That time I was a child, so I didn't really appreciate it. But when I went back in 2023, I was like, oh my God, it's beautiful, residential, quiet, calm. If you want to live a quiet life in Ghana, Koforidua is definitely a place to consider. It's a little further out, so it's about 2.5 hours drive away from Accra, but I guess that's the essence of being away from the city, right? You want to be a little further out so you don't have to deal with all the chaos and stuff. Within Koforidua itself, there's barely any traffic. It's just your typical quiet town. There's no shortage of like smaller shops, very good infrastructure in terms of roads and hospitals and that type of thing. The only thing is, I feel like as a young person, you probably can't live there because there's like literally like one bar that everybody goes to at nighttime because there's not many options at all. I forgot the name of the bar. I think it's Daddy's Bar or Daddy's Joy or something along Daddy's something. It's really popular in Koforidua. Everybody knows it because it's literally the only bar there is, you know. So if you're someone that's big on nightlife and stuff like that, it might not be ideal for you. But if you're retiring and you're wanting something that's like an area where it's nice and quiet, intimate, peaceful, you have access to the basic things like, you know, the shops and those type of things, then Koforidua might be a place to consider. Another advantage to being in Koforidua is it's also a bit more affordable in comparison to Accra. So you could probably rent out there for significantly cheaper than you would if you were to stay in a part of Accra, which makes sense because it's on the outskirts. The other place that I want to mention is Akosombo. You guys, I love Akosombo. I went to school over there when I was much younger as well, before I left Ghana. And that time I was in boarding school. I didn't really get to see much of it. But through this work, I went there and I explored and I love it. It's so nice and quiet, so peaceful. Again, it's similar to Koforidua, very quiet. There isn't too much to do out that way. It's mostly resorts and things like that because the Volta Lake runs through it. And the Akosombo Dam and those things, they're all out that way. So it makes it a very chill, like if you holiday home, your home where you want to retire in, that type of vibe, you know. But if you're much younger, you might get bored because there's not much to do out that way. But it's beautiful, very stunning. There's some culture and history to it, stuff like that. So I definitely recommend depending on your needs as well. Cost of living is also significantly cheaper than you'd find in Accra. The next place that I want to recommend is Sunyani. Sunyani is within the Brong Ahafo region. So that's like 2 hours away from Kumasi or so. This is also a popular place. I haven't personally been there yet, but from what I've seen of it, I feel like it can be a good place to consider because it's extremely clean, very well organized. You have access to basic markets and shops and things like that. So if you want a quiet life again, that might be a place to consider. The only cons to Sunyani is it's not as busy as places like Accra and Kumasi and stuff like that. So a lot of the time, people will still go to Kumasi to shop and then bring it back to Sunyani and stuff like that. So that's something to bear in mind. And cost of living out there is significantly cheaper than you would find out here in Accra. The final place that I'll mention is Takoradi. Takoradi developed quite significantly a few years ago because they discovered that there was oil out that way. So there's lots of those type of corporations out that way. So there's people that are living and working within the oil industry out that way. So it's developed quite fast. Again, it's quite residential. It's a bit of a blend, I would say. It's quite urban, but at the same time, it's not overly busy. You have good access to the coast as well. Beautiful, incredible beaches that are spotless, immaculate, clean, all the good words you can use to describe a beach, you'll find out that way. Takoradi is not necessarily cheaper, even though it's outside of Accra. For some reason, the cost of living over there can still be expensive. So that's something to bear in mind. But it's also a place to research and consider if you're looking to move out this way. That was 10 different things that I have listed for you. I hope this video has been useful. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. In my next one, I'm going to talk about places that I do not recommend you stay at if you move out this way. Don't forget to follow your bliss, so na life is short. Follow your bliss, na nipa ye den. Follow your bliss, na di ebesi biya ye, and follow your bliss, na den ne mada. Take care, guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye.